Hello, this is Pastor Russell Roberts with Calvary Baptist Church, and today I'm going to read our sermon summary for Rahab and the Spies. This is from Joshua chapter 2. It is the second sermon in the Conquering an Independent Church sermon series. The focus verse is Hebrews 11:31, which reads, "By faith the prostitute Rahab did not perish along with those who were disobedient, after she had welcomed the spies in peace." After Moses' death, Joshua assumed command of the children of Israel. They were and had been camped in the plains of Moab for quite some time, just east of Canaan, beyond the Jordan River. The Lord spoke to Joshua and instructed him to tarry there no longer, but to arise and lead the Hebrews into the promised land. Upon receiving God's command, Joshua immediately sent orders through the camp, advising the people to prepare for the upcoming invasion. In 3 days' time, Joshua planned to cross the Jordan into Canaan. This morning, as we resume our study of the Conquering and Independent Church, we will meet a Gentile prostitute named Rahab. As it turns out, she will prove to be a valuable friend to the sons of Israel. Once more, she will exhibit a bold and unflinching faith in God that was heralded by the writer of Hebrews and is still remembered and talked about by Christians today. The first point this morning is called Spies in Jericho, Joshua chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. Having given notice to the people, Joshua's next move was now to send a pair of spies from their encampment at Shittim ahead into Canaan with instructions to visit and survey the land, especially the stronghold city of Jericho. So the two spies made their way to the walled city, entered inconspicuously through its gates, and walked about the streets, making careful observations. When the evening came, they entered into the house of the prostitute named Rahab, hoping to rest there while remaining undetected. However, the spies' presence had been discovered, and their whereabouts were reported to the king of Jericho. He immediately dispatched officials to Rahab's house in order to locate the intruders. When the king's men arrived, they asked Rahab to turn the spies over to their custody. Rahab answered that the spies had been there earlier, but stated they had already left, and she did not know where they had gone. In truth, she had hidden them on the roof of her house, concealed under stalks of flax. The king's officials believed her story and departed. Assuming the Hebrew spies were returning to their camp, the king's men pursued them down the road towards the Jordan River and its various crossing points. The city gates were shut behind them for the night as soon as they left Jericho. It is important to remember that Joshua had already announced his intentions to cross the Jordan into the promised land. Thus, these spies were not sent to evaluate whether such an invasion was possible. Rather, they were sent to assess strengths and weaknesses of the city of Jericho. Joshua had already determined that this would be the place where the first point of attack would occur, and so he sent scouts to search for any vulnerabilities. Joshua would use this information to develop a battle plan. In the same way, whenever we are about to begin a new project or task, or are looking forward to an interview or some sort of preparation, it's always wise to do some research in advance. Gathering information in advance can help us to form a more effective strategy for getting the job done and/or increasing the likelihood of success. The second point this morning is called Rahab Demonstrates Faith. Joshua 2, verses 8 through 14. Picking up on the story, after the king's officials had left, Rahab went up on the roof of her house to speak with the two spies. She told them that the Canaanites and the citizens of Jericho had heard reports of their remarkable exploits during the Exodus. They were aware of the Red Sea crossing. They were aware of the Hebrews' military victories over the Amorites. The children of Jacob had developed quite a reputation, causing the people of Canaan to be terrified of them. Rahab was convinced that God had given the land over to them, and she acknowledged that Jehovah, the God of Israel, not the gods of Canaan, that Jehovah was the true Lord over the heavens and the earth. Rahab asked the spies to swear that they would spare her and her family whenever the attack against Jericho commenced. She had shown kindness by hiding them from the king, and she asked for their kindness in exchange. The spies agreed to her request and promised to spare Rahab's family when the time came, on the condition that she not tell anyone of their plans. Let us remember that Rahab was a prostitute. Though considered to be a lowly and degrading occupation, prostitution was legal and common in most ancient societies. There is no indication that either of the spies ever chastised Rahab or condemned her for her work. Their silence on the issue doesn't justify it, but it does emphasize that Rahab's faith was more important than her deeds. She forsook the false gods of Canaan, her homeland, and trusted in the true and living God of Israel. She placed her faith in the Lord and aligned herself with the people of God. Thus, she would be saved on the basis of her faith, not on the nature of her works. The third and final point this morning is called the Scarlet Cord. We'll read the remainder of Joshua chapter 2, starting in verse 15 through the end of the chapter. Rahab's house was located along the city's outer wall. Therefore, she let a rope down from her window so that the spies could escape. It was night time, and the gates of Jericho had already been closed. She advised the pair to hide in the hill country for 3 days before making their way back to the camp, because the king's men had stated that they were going to search for them along the road. The spies instructed Rahab to tie a scarlet cord in her window after they escaped to serve as a visible marker for the children of Israel. When they attacked the city, this scarlet cord would designate her house as a safe space. Those inside would be protected, while those outside would be killed. After they finished talking, Rahab sent the spies away and tied the scarlet cord in her window. The duo fled to the hill country and hid for 3 days, just as Rahab had suggested they do. Unable to find them, the king's men gave up their pursuit and returned to Jericho. The spies then departed from the hill country, crossed back over the Jordan River, and returned to Joshua. They reported everything that they had seen and heard, including details of their encounter with Rahab and their promise to her. They told Joshua that the Lord had indeed given them the land, and that the citizens of Jericho and all the inhabitants of Canaan were in great despair because of them. The scarlet cord described in this passage is reminiscent of the lamb's blood that was smeared on the doorpost during the night of Passover. On that occasion, the death angel passed through Egypt, killing the firstborn son of every unmarked house, while sparing those that were marked by blood. In the same way, this scarlet cord would serve as a sign to protect Rahab and her house from harm. It metaphorically pictures and foreshadows the blood of Jesus Christ, which covers and atones for the sin of mankind. Sinners who have been washed in the blood of Jesus are cleansed and made righteous. They are exempted from God's wrathful judgment. In conclusion, according to the genealogy we find in Matthew chapter 1, Rahab was a distant ancestor of Jesus Christ. She would eventually marry a man named Salmon, and the couple would have a son, or perhaps grandson. Some genealogies skip generations in the Bible. But her son would be named Boaz. We will read and talk much more about Boaz later in this series. Nevertheless, in accordance with God's divine providence, Rahab is remembered as much more than just a lowly prostitute. On the contrary, She is considered to be a biblical hero who turned from the empty idolatry and paganism of her people to a saving faith in the Lord. Rahab was the first Gentile to be saved and is regarded by some theologians to be a precursor of the New Testament church. Rahab was obviously a very smart woman. When she heard about the miraculous wonders of God and how he had performed them for his people, she didn't deny them or dismiss them. She didn't try to belittle them or explain them away. Nor did she say, "Well, that works for you, but my God works for me." Instead, Rahab opened her heart, believed in the Lord, and as a result, she was radically saved. Rahab was converted from death to life. Today, you have heard of the saving power of God, as demonstrated through the blood and the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Will you respond in faith like Rahab? God bless you.